is my seed sowing technique. The first thing I do is fill my containers. Now what I like to use is something that's about 3 inches across the top. Round or square makes no difference. This is a peat-free multi-purpose seed sowing compost, nice and fine, not too many lumps and bumps. That just saves time. If you have compost that's got lots of bits in it, well, pick them out from the top of the pot. You don't want them because if a seed lands on them, they're not going to sprout very well. Now you'll also notice how I've filled up the pot right to the brim, okay? And I've just scraped across it along the rim, and I'm not pushing it down with my fingers, keeping plenty of air in the compost. You see, pots in compost these days are designed to find their own level once they've had their first watering. So I've got a few trays that I'm sowing there, and I've got my watering can. And all I'm going to do is give them a soak. And you can see on my pot how the compost is just settling away from the rim now, just going down about ½ centimetre, which is perfect for sowing. This is the perfect level. Now you often see gardeners, right? They only fill the pots halfway up with compost. They're trying to save a few pennies, I guess, but that's a terrible thing. Now it does save on compost, but it's the kiss of death for seedlings because they'll have to climb up and get their heads above the rim of the container to find the light, and that means they become stretched. And stretched seedlings rarely, if ever, turn into stocky, solid plants. You want the compost to be really high and the seeds perched on top of it, because that way they won't have to fight for light to poke their heads up above the rim. If they do that, they become leggy, and leggy seedlings seldom recover. So full pots, and then you sow your seeds. Now the seeds I'm going to sow are tomatoes, money maker. And whenever I'm opening packets of seed, I always use a pair of scissors, because that way you can store the seed nice and flat. If you tear them off and fold the packet and put it in your pocket, the old allotment ears trick, it's a bit of a disaster for reusing them again. If you look after the packets, you keep the instructions on the back, and you can store them and use the seed over a few seasons. Now what I've done there is just put a clutch of seeds into the middle of my pour. The thing to avoid, right, is having a pinch more for luck, because it isn't lucky for the seedlings, because just like fighting for the light for the rim of the pot, if they're cheek bejowl, they'll battle each other and stretch like trees in the forest and become leggy, and you just don't want that. Now this, what I've got, a dozen in there, in a 3-inch pot like this, that's ideal. And I use the crack of my hand there, tapping my wrist, just to drop the seeds onto the surface of the compost. Now if any are bunched together, I use my other finger just to separate them apart, because these seeds aren't going to stay in this pot forever. When they sprout, I'm going to move them on, or prick them out as the technique's called, into their own containers, but for now reasonably spaced. And again, I'm avoiding the temptation for adding another pinch for luck. It's not lucky. Now, to cover over the seeds, how much compost you cover a seed with all relates to the size of the kernel. Seeds like tomatoes, they're about ½ millimetre thick. That means they need ½ millimetre of compost over the top. Tiny seeds like Nicotiana, begonias, honestly, they're so small you should never cover them. Just leave them on the surface. So tiny seeds, just leave as they are. Now you sieve over compost. Well, I don't have a sieve. What I use is a pot, fill it with a bit of compost, and then it comes out the bottom like in a sieve, little shape like that, to just cover the seeds, and that is enough. And because this pot has added water, this container won't need any more H2O until the seeds are up. It won't need touching at all. I'll just put that on my propagator for a moment, because I just want to talk about labelling. Labelling is essential. Now, even now, after all my years of gardening, I propagate stuff like this rose. I think, well, I'll remember what that is, but never do. That's like a brain like a sieve. Anyway, I wish I'd labelled that, so I'm certainly going to label my moneymaker tomatoes. Now, a label isn't just for the name of your seeds. It's for any interesting facts that you think might be useful off the seed packet. So you could put the date on when you sowed them. You could put the height it gets, whether it's a cordon, I'd add a little C for that, or whether it's greenhouse or outdoors, so greenhouse or outdoors. I like a bit of intel on my labels. For example, come over here, I'll show you my chilies. What I like to know about a chili pepper is, I like to know how hot it is. So that's 45,000 Scoville. The D represents that dusk, a nice little chili pepper, is a dwarf. Okay, important to know, information that you would never remember. Now this goes onto a propagator or onto a windowsill indoors. You can cover this with a clear plastic bag just to keep the humidity around the seeds. What I have, and I use on my heated bench, are these little cloches. These are sold to cover salad on veg plots, but in a greenhouse like this, they're ideal because they allow a little space for the seeds to come up, and you've got a little top if should it become a bit too humid inside there. And these tomatoes will be up within a fortnight. As soon as I notice the seeds are on the move, the top comes off and the pot is out in full light. When you water pots of seeds, okay, you've got to use tap water. It's got to be fresh. Never get it from the water butt because it's full of fungal spores, or fusarium spores they're known as, that will cause the seedlings to wilt. Never take a chance with that, so always tap water. You can use a watering can to water your seeds, but always watch out. Like the first bit that comes out is always a dribble, and if that landed on your pot, it would slosh all the seeds to the side of the container. So what I do is use a slightly more gentle method. I've got a little hand sprayer. One of those little houseplant misters would be ideal. And what this does, it just gives enough water, but gently, to mist the surface of the compost. And that, of course, is where the kernels are. And that really helps them germinate. This little trick is a lifesaver.